Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Hub World podcast. Today, we are going to be doing our second part of our Pokemon Generational Showdown episode. If you caught the first part, great. If you didn't, you might want to go back and listen so that you can get a sense of what we're doing and also get our discussion around certain aspects of the Pokemon generations. But before we get to what that is, we'll just remind you of who the players are today. So, my name is Jules. Hello.
Matteo?
I'm Gino.
Giancarlo.
And Joe.
And we are going to continue our discussion. So I'm not going to go over all of the rules for what we're doing, but I'll give you just a brief rundown. We do again suggest that you go back and listen to part one if you want to get the full breakdown of exactly what we're doing. But in general, we're breaking down the Pokemon generations into four categories. We're talking about what the best and worst are in those four categories. So those categories are region, which is like environments, landscape, and such. Story, which are characters, narrative, gym leaders, villainous teams, like those kinds of things, lore. Then we have gameplay, which is just the gameplay mechanics, and finally the Pokemon themselves. Last time we talked about the region and we talked about the story, which means that this episode we will be talking about the gameplay and we will be talking about the Pokemon themselves. Just to remind you all about what we deliberated last time, we decided that the best region in Pokemon comes from Gen 4. It is Sinnoh. And the worst region comes from Gen 7. That is Alola. And for story, we decided that the best story with an asterisk comes from Gen 5, Unova. And the worst story comes again from Gen 7, Alola. So now we're going to begin doing our next ones. We're going to be doing best gameplay, best gameplay to start, and then we'll do worst gameplay. So again, I think we should kind of shift up our speaking order from last time. So I think maybe we'll keep our same speaking order, but start with somebody different. Why don't we start with?
Well, I can go if I'll
Sure.
volunteer to go first.
Matteo, why don't you start with gameplay?
So this is how I look at gameplay. To me personally, the gameplay of Pokemon really, like the core gameplay, really hasn't changed since Diamond and Pearl. And Diamond and Pearl and Black and White were very, very similar. So for me, I'm completely disregarding anything that came before Diamond and Pearl. But ever since Black and White, Gen 6, Gen 7, and Gen 8 have added new mechanics that are like powering up your Pokemon mid battle. So, and to me, I think that is the main difference in the battle gameplay of Pokemon that I really value. And to me, by far the best version of that is Mega Evolution. So that's why I have to go with Gen 6 as the best gameplay. Because Mega Evolutions, I love that we got to revisit some old favorites in Pokemon and also they gave new life to Pokemon that have kind of been forgotten. And I really appreciate that, honestly. And also it really mixed up the meta. And I know some Mega Evolutions are really overpowered, but just the fan service alone, I think, is worth mentioning. But the other thing that X and Y did that really rocked the meta was the adding of the fairy type, and dragons needed a nerf. So the fact that fairies existed kind of just as a way to nerf dragons, but they've also now they've really come into their own as a type. They went through all the previous Pokemon that came out before, added the fairy type to specific Pokemon like Clefairy, obviously, and like Jigglypuff and Gardevoir, stuff like that. That made sense. And now, over the years, fairies really grown and evolved to be a really good type as well. And that all started with Generation 6. So just quickly, that's why I really think Gen 6, for me at least, has the best gameplay.
I'm gonna go on a bit of a different route with when I think of gameplay for the Pokemon series, Matteo. I want to I think of what was added, and so in Gen 1, it was the actual we got the Pokemon formula, go from town to town, collect badges. You have these monsters, they attack and defend. Gen 2, they added the breeding mechanics, where you can breed for specific moves, or you can breed two Pokemon together, you get the eggs. That was all fine and dandy. Gen 3 brought it in natures. But Gen 4, for me personally, I think that was the one where that really, really kicked things into a bit of overdrive. And this is for one specific thing only. And this is something that maybe Giancarlo can speak a little bit more to later on. But everything before Gen 4, if you had a fire Pokemon, doesn't matter if it was a physical fire Pokemon, just say like Hondour, all fire moves are specials. Like it would use your special attack stat. And if you had just say a like a physical Pokemon that wanted to use a fire move, it would pull off of the special stat no matter what you did. And in Gen 4 they split the attacks. So for instance, also in Gen 3, Trico, the final evolution Sceptile had the move Leaf Blade. Now grass type moves were strictly special and Sceptile was a physical attacker, so its special move wasn't even that great. And then when they redid all the moves basically in the game, so they changed Leaf Blade from a special attack to a physical attack. And then Sceptile was a lot better because it was using its primary stat with its signature move. And I feel like for competitive, Gen 4 was the best for Pokemon because of that. You introduced that split of the typings and everything. Also, like, okay, you had new evolutions to older Pokemon. That was cool. But like, I feel like that one little gameplay mechanic completely changed how the game was played. So yeah, that's my choice. I guess next is Giancarlo.
Yeah. I was really holding my breath on that one because I definitely wanted to add on to it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So as much as I do agree with you that the physical special split is a very strong point inside of the Pokemon series because it's always been such a burden ever since the first generation. Old mechanics of Pokemon have kind of been up in the air. You know, there was all these stupid mechanics that happened inside of the first generation, such as how special attack and special defense were all tied to one specific stat, and how speed was also linked towards your critical hit rate. So if you were faster, you would get more critical hits, and which would cause a lot of Pokemon, kind of like Persian, who was the fastest in the first generation, to just curb stomp everything. Kind of went on a little tangent over there about Pokemon history, but yeah, Gen 4 does have a turning point. However, I will say that I don't think it had as much of an impact as Gen 3 did for one specific reason. Gen 3 introduced abilities into the game, which it created this actual differentiation between different Pokemon as well. Because what's the difference between you getting a Magmar and a Charmeleon? It's not really much differentiation aside from slight differences in stats, which makes it difficult for you to actually pick the Pokemon that you want. But with abilities, you'd be able to actually differentiate and spread Pokemon around based on what they can do in battle. Charmeleon might have the ability Blaze, which increases its fire type moves when it gets to half health. Meanwhile, Magmar has the ability Flash Fire, which, if it were to take a hit from a fire type move, it would not take damage and instead get an increased buff to its special attack for tanking that fire hit. It created this very strong deviation away from the previous norm, which was basically just kind of button mashy in the Pokemon series. You get a Pokemon that has the stronger type than the other Pokemon, you click A and then you're done. But with abilities, it created a little bit more strategy inside the game. Gen 3 is also the same generation where they introduced double battles and they introduced weather, which also very much changed the core demographic for the competitive scene of Pokemon for basically till now, essentially. Because weather is still a big thing that's used in the Pokemon games. They even had to nerf it in Generation 6. Before that, weather was a permanent status until it was either swapped out or if it was dealt with by Rayquaza with his ability Airlock. And double battles are still used in competitive formats today. Since then, it has been the only different type of battle that has not been taken away from a Pokemon game since. As much as I do agree with you in saying that Gen 4 was very important to the gameplay aspects, I don't feel as if it had a great enough hit as Gen 3 did because it created the building blocks for Gen 4 to build off of.
Also, though, Giancarlo, Gen 3 did also add natures. That just adds to everything that you said as well with like abilities. It just added another layer of differentiation between Pokemon.
All right. I'm gonna hop on here because in general I agree. I think the most so far with Matteo. I think Gen 6 had the best gameplay in terms of the mechanics and what it added. And also you gotta remember Gen 6 made EV training accessible with
I forgot about that. Yeah.
yeah, it actually opened up basically the competitive scene to more people by making it more easily accessible. And even if it isn't as easily as accessible today, I think it still is. I'm trying to remember how you do it in Gen 8. But
It's easier, honestly. It's gotten easier every game since Gen 6.
yeah,
I believe.
it's just it's opened up Pokemon the ability
Gen
for
7
more
was
people.
harder.
7 was harder. That was it.
Yeah.
Gen 8 is definitely easier.
At least it just made it easier for people to understand and just to actually try to train their Pokemon, to the max. So I don't want to expand on it too much because it basically Mateo I think hit the nail on the head. But I just wanted to add in, you got to remember EV training too. Making it easier, more accessible is a huge thing.
So I'm torn between three different things, and it's because there's three different ways you can interpret gameplay, and for the most part, I think you guys have all stayed within the same kind of route of like what gameplay means, which is the mechanics, which is totally valid. And if we're talking about mechanics, I absolutely probably fall similarly to Joe and Matteo in that I really liked Mega Evolutions and I really like mechanically where the game's at in Gen 6. But if we're talking about quality of life and we're talking about like the game being accessible, Gen 8 has done wonders for the Pokemon community in terms of how you can actually access a team that you want and how quickly you can do it by introducing things like the EXP candies and easily accessible vitamins and like ability capsules, like all those kinds of things. It's like great for in terms of Gen 8. Although Gen 8 also has Dexit, which is a big no-no. But the one thing I feel like nobody's really talked about in terms of gameplay is we've focused on mechanics and like touched on quality of life and like accessibility, but nobody's really talked features. Nobody's really talked about, well, what about like the actual features in the game? And like when I think about Pokemon, I think about what was the funnest Pokemon game for me to play. Like of course, like in terms of making a team, Gen 6 and Gen 8, like had some great stuff. But when I think of actual like core features, the game that screams out at me is Black and White 2 because they had that amazing, like incredible gym leader challenge where you could fight all the gym leaders from all the different games and you could go in and you could like have like this battle royale tournament against all of them. Gen 4 also stands out there where they had the gym leader cafe, and there was like all the digging mini game. Like I feel like when it comes to features, the modern Pokemon games, like starting with Gen 6, really fail in that capacity. Like I feel like in terms of features and in terms of content, it's just not there. And so I'm more inclined to lean, and I don't think I'm gonna give like I don't know if I can pick what I want best gameplay. I'm trying to quantify, but I'm definitely leaning more toward like Gen 4 or 5 in that regard because I think it's so much more important to have something like a Battle Frontier, or like an interesting post game where you can rebattle the trainers or rebattle the gym leaders than it is to just have megas. Like I like megas, but if I have nobody to battle against in the game with those megas, nobody interesting, then why do I care to have them? And I think Gen 4 and Gen 5 did those things the best where like they made significant trainers and significantly important trainers battleable after the game. There was like the battle castle and the battle frontier and like all those like the gym leader challenges and a post game story in platinum and in black and white too. In platinum and in diamond and pearl, like the amount of legendaries you go around to catch at the end of the game, not just new ones but even old ones. Like there was so much content, like just, and I really feel like that's lacking in the new games.
Now, I want to ask you another question then. What about gold and silver?
Were you talking about the second gym leader challenge?
Just being able to go back to Canada.
Yeah.
That is as gameplay like that. You're basically getting an entire game for the cost of another.
I agree, and like that's one of the reasons I love gold and silver in general. But when I'm even just thinking about gameplay, like I don't even think that's substantial enough because while you can do those things, you only do them once. It's the equivalent of me playing the gym leader challenge in black and white 2 like twice. right? Like, and it's not a whole nother game. It's actually much shorter. Like, the only thing that really makes the second half of the game in Johto long is the fact that there's very significant level jumps between the gym leaders, but in terms of content between the areas between the gym leaders, there's really nothing. I don't know. But then again, like, now that I'm talking like this, I'm like, well, but how about Gen 8? Because I've poured, I don't even know how many hours into playing raids with you guys, doing the legendary challenge, like the legendary dens, like shiny hunting. Like, there's so much
Yeah,
content.
that's a huge
Like,
one right there. Honestly, shiny
So
hunting.
much replayability with that.
right? So, like, gameplay is really up in the air for me because I do think that there's different strengths in different levels of gameplay. But I think if we're talking mechanics, strictly mechanics, Gen 6, in my opinion, was when it was at its best because I like megas and I don't like Z moves. So Gen 6 for me is like when it was at its best in terms of like accessibility. Gen 8, like, there's no question. Gen 8's just like so easy to EV train and like build your teams. But in terms of content, like content playing with friends, absolutely, like Gen 8 tops everything. Like, just because there's things you can do with friends, which isn't really there in previous games. But in terms of just like a single player experience, like the older games like Gen 4 and Gen 5, like Platinum, Black and White 2, like the content there is just incredible. And like literally every single day after I beat the game, I woke up, turned on the game, went to go see who was in the gym leader cafe, battled them, and then went to go talk to the guy in the house to find out what the roaming Pokemon was, because there was a different roaming Pokemon every day, and there was like reasons for me to go back, and I really liked that.
Yeah, like even like Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, the shiny hunting in that game was insane with the horde battles, like how you would exploit the horde battles and build your chains like that. And then
Oh, Matteo,
also
are you going to talk about what I think you're going to talk about?
well, I had that insane thing where I encountered like I found a shiny Swablu, accidentally killed it, but my chain continued. Then literally the next battle, I had another shiny Swablu, and I lost my mind. And Jules was on. We were chatting, and
I thought
while
those
that
weren't
happened,
chains. I could have sworn that Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire and like X and Y wasn't a chain based system. It was just the fact that when you were fighting hordes just had like a ridiculously high chance of you finding a shiny.
regardless though, the odds of me getting that with those two shiny Swablus in a row is like the odds were insanely low of me of that happening to me. But the other thing was getting the like going through the portals, getting the older legendaries, and like that's available in Crown Tundra in Gen 8, which is really awesome. I really like how they added that. So like I thought for sure Gen 6 was going to be the one that I really wanted to push, and like that was the thing that I was thinking about just from the amount of hours I put into we put into battling it online and that. But then when you talked about other modes that are unique to other games like that didn't even honestly I didn't even consider that. So now it's a little more open here. But I still think if I have to go with the thing that I spent the most time on, it would probably still be Gen 6, honestly.
I think I am gonna go with Gen 6 as well.
Me
Just
too.
because like the more I think about the features. Friend safaris, the cafes,
Pokemon and me.
Pokemon on me. Even just like when you think about like the system, I genuinely and like this is genuine, they have never had a better multiplayer system in the series than Gen 6. Like the nav, whatever it was called, Dex Nav, was such a great interface. And I don't know what crazy over at the Pokemon Company or at Game Freak decided that they should go from that amazing system to the fucking Pokemon Festival bullshit in Gen 7. But whoever did that was literally on crack. And then like Gen 8 is a little bit better, but it's still nowhere near as good as that interface. Like, and I remember because that interface was so good, we actually all played online quite a bit together.
I will say, just to add on to what everybody's saying about Gen 6, if we're just talking about like just the amount of content inside the game, Gen 6 definitely has like an egregious amount of replayability involved. One thing that I can remember specifically is the Battle Chateau, where if you just wanted to play around with new Pokemon and create a new team and level them up, you just go to the Battle Chateau every single day. There's a new wave of trainers that come in every single day that you can constantly fight against, all of them having different level variations depending on who you want to fight and how strong your Pokemon are and everything. And you could even fight the previous gym leaders as well as they do the similar thing that the Battle Cafe and 4 did, where they kind of come in and you can fight them with their previous Pokemon as well and level up and that sort of thing. Plus, Gen 6 included the global trade system, which is still being used to this day. But
I
I
thought
think
Gen 4 introduced the GTS.
not to the same extent as 6.
Like the GTS as we know it, like Giancarlo said, that was Gen 6.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I have in my PowerPoint for later. The shit GTS in 4 and 5 is a point against Gen 5. So, but yeah, it was in 4. It was perfected in 6.
Like you could actually search up the Pokemon that you want and like any like on all the different filters for that Pokemon. That was super convenient. Plus also just the online on the 3DS was way better than it was on. Actually, it was non-existent on the DS, right? So I think unless you had like a DSi or some shit like that.
No, you could connect to the internet on the DS, but you had to. It
You
was
need
very
the
limited.
Wi-Fi adapter, which I owned.
If that's everything, if everyone's spoken, I think now it's pretty unanimous. What we agree on here is the best gameplay, which would be Kalos Gen 6. Now to move on to what we think is the worst gameplay, for me at least, is Gen 7, honestly. I hate Z moves. The cool thing about Mega Evolutions and Gigantamaxing Pokemon, so it would alter the form of the Pokemon, give them different designs, which is really cool. I felt like the Pokemon that got better with Gigantamaxing and Mega Evolutions kind of deserved it, and it would make you like fully evolve that Pokemon so that you would gain that extra power, basically. But the fact that Z moves could be given to any Pokemon really kind of diluted it, and it was kind of dumb, honestly. Like I really just didn't like the whole concept behind Z moves. It's just one powerful attack, and then that's it. Z moves are just. It's honestly, it's just it to me. That's like the epitome of what like a cheap gimmick is. The Z moves just seem like a super generic thing they just added into the game, and they were substituted as like the crystals were substitutes for like badges almost in a way. And I just didn't really I really didn't like that, and it didn't do enough to add to the formula that basically any other Pokemon game before it added, maybe with the exception of Gen 5.
Well, if we're bashing Gen 7 for this, also they removed gyms, and that's a no-no. You don't take away the gyms.
That is true. We've said that in part 1. We did not really. We kind of all agree that we did not like that in Gen 7. Does anyone have anything else to add like if does anyone else share Gen 7 as a like what they think Gen 7 is the worst, or
I would like
Um,
to say this actually, just for the sake of saying it. I'm going to say Gen 1, just because everything every gameplay, like everything gameplay wise, got better. But that's just being a product of the time, right? So like
mhm.
everything was bad about Gen 1 because it was the first game.
Yeah,
The hardware itself was really bad. Trading and all that stuff, like connecting the two games to trade with your friends and everything, huge and amazing thing. But you had to go out and buy a peripheral for it. It was not inherently like tied in with the game. You had to use that cable, and sometimes if things weren't connected properly, you think it wouldn't work, and it was just annoying.
Yeah, but like you got to give it credit for its time.
no,
that wasn't
no,
the
it
limitation
was-
of this. It's the limitation
it was
of the
just a product of
system.
its time.
that's the thing, and that's why I'm like I'm coming from this at the point of view where like we have to. I think it's really unfair though to say that though, Gino. Like I get it, and I will never go back to play those games. But assessing each game at the moment they came out is probably, I think that's the fairest approach, right? We could give Gen 1 multiple more, like we could give it more awards, but like of other things that we've awarded, but like I don't know, I just think it deserves recognition just because it was the first, and by extension I think Gen 2 gets that as well, like that nostalgia pass.
Yeah.
That's all we had at the time, right? And it was passable for its time. but
Yeah.
now it's not. So
Gen 2
it's
I'd say Gen 2 is definitely better gameplay wise because it added all the breeding mechanics as well as like you could go use the time machine and trade with your Pokemons from the past. And it was the first time you could actually bring Pokemon between generations.
I want to add on to what you had said though about like Gen 1 and like sure, like everybody's like, oh well, it's the product of its time, blah blah. Like sure, but we're also considering even the remakes, and even with the remakes, I still think like it's still down there.
but at least with because are we counting the Let's Go games?
I personally wouldn't because they're so vastly different in terms of core mechanics.
All right, but even with Fire Red and Leaf Green, those games that they came bundled with the
With the wireless trading
the
thing.
wireless yeah, so like you didn't at least need to go out and buy an extra link cable or whatever because you actually got bundled in that peripheral. Gen 1 hasn't been iterated in the mainline Pokemon games since Gen 3, so it's still kind of dated, but it's not as dated as it was before. So
Yeah, I will agree with that.
yeah, I honestly forgot that the remakes existed, to be honest with you.
And yeah, like I, as much as like I would love to and I would consider Let's Go for some things in some categories for sure, but I think in terms of gameplay, it's hard to compare Let's Go with the rest of the series because like gameplay
That's where
wise,
the
it
biggest
does have a
departure is.
vast, yeah, it is like vastly at the core mechanics
Mhm.
are very different. It's hard to quantify it here. But I definitely wouldn't quantify it as the worst. Like I would never call Let's Go the worst. So I don't even think it applies here. If anything, it helps Gen 1. I don't think it hurts Gen 1.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I view it from the point of it helping Gen 1. I don't agree though in general. I do think gameplay wise, Gen 5 is the worst.
Okay, elaborate.
I will. I don't know if it's time to pull out the good old slideshow because this takes I'm gonna do it. This takes some points out of my slide. So I'm just gonna go through it now. So
Okay.
and for those of you that are watching, you'll be able to see some visuals. For those of you that aren't watching, I'll try to be as descriptive as it can be. So why Gen 5 is trash by Joe. On the screen, you'll see two garbage cans, one for the games and then one for the starters. We'll go to the first slide. So for number one, garbage Pokemon designs include a garbage
Come on,
Pokemon.
look, now we're getting ahead of ourselves. Come on. This is the next
I'm
talking
going
point.
through it though very quickly, and I'm just going to leave it at Garbodor. Gameplay wise, no casino. The first gen did not have a casino. Coincidence? No, it's just trash. So that's the gameplay element that's missing. Even though Hard Gold, Soul Silver had following Pokemon, Gen 5 did not. Another gameplay element that's missing for some reason. GTS was shit just as it was in Gen 4, as we said. Gen 6 perfected it. You can't find old Pokemon until you beat the game. Too many new shit to your Pokemon. I know that goes with Pokemon, but technically it's also the mechanics of hiding all the old Pokemon behind the wall of having to actually beat the game. This again goes into the Pokemon category for later, but Reshiram and Zekrom are the worst designed box art legendaries in existence. Back to gameplay though, no Safari Zone. That's huge. Not having a Safari Zone. Like, why would you take out the Safari Zone? And if you're gonna argue that the Sanctuary thing, that doesn't count because you actually had to catch all the. You had to complete the Unova Dex or whatever it is first to actually be able to go into that thing. So that doesn't count. Sorry again that this goes into Pokemon, but the worst design starters in the series, and yes, Poplio is better than these three. Triple Battle was a failure in terms of the gameplay and mechanics. We even thought this was a good idea. And yes, even in Gen 6, it was still a failure. That's why, as Giancarlo mentioned before, it doesn't exist anymore. I put N as the dumbest plot in all of Pokemon. That goes back to her previous episode, which I really suggest that you watched her story. The only good Pokemon are Chandelure, Zoroark, Genesect, and Keldeo. 12, the region looks like it's manufactured and just isn't a Pokemon region. And 13, garbage Pokemon designs include a garbage Pokemon. My name is Garbodor, and I'm the worst designed Pokemon ever. Gen 5 is trash. Thank you for listening and watching the visuals if you came along for the ride. If you didn't, you just had to hear the visuals. Just know that there were Pokemon on the screen in a lot of fancy colors. Took me about 10 minutes to make, but I very much appreciate all the support for my hatred of Gen 5. But anyways, in terms of, as I said, the gameplay, the actual gameplay portions, I do think not having so many of those random things that were just there before, it hurts Gen 5. And I understand it's trying to be a departure from the series in terms of way or a new start, but it's just like some things, why get rid of it? what harm did all those things do other than eat up development time? Maybe instead of developing all these extra Pokemon that most of them were trash, they should have actually just maybe imagined some of these other things into better ways. But I just don't think the gameplay of Gen 5 was good.
You had some very valid points. There were some very big omissions. But I have to go with Gino. I think the gameplay just gets better. Like I genuinely think Gen 1 is the worst. Like when it comes down to core gameplay, like I said, like it's about features for me and it's about accessibility. And not so much about like I'm not saying Gen 1 is the worst because it's like mechanics hadn't developed yet, but like even in terms of features, like there's not really a ton to do in Kanto. It's fairly bland. Like I love the characters of Kanto. I really do. Like, and I like aspects of Kanto, but I really just think it was always like one of the reasons I don't replay Kanto, despite almost all of my favorite Pokemon being from Kanto, is because I'm bored every time I touch a Kanto game. Like I'm really bored, and like I would never choose to play in like with a Kanto game, and like the only like honestly, in my opinion, the best version of Kanto is Let's Go. And I'm not considering Let's Go as part of this personally because I think it's a very big change. Like I would almost put it into like a spin-off section in terms of what it's like. But like I just don't have fun with Kanto anymore. Like it's so outdated and there's not much to do. There really just isn't. Even with the remakes, like it's just not there, and like I don't even want them to remake it again. That's the thing. The only reason I was okay with Let's Go is because they actually did something different. I was like, okay, fine, but like I would never want them to remake and act like do a legitimate like core remake of Gen 1 because Gen 1 just doesn't do it for me. Like it's just
Yeah, I think like if Gen 1 wasn't as beloved as it is, I might have a different opinion than that. But I feel like once you take the nostalgia glasses off of Gen 1, then it's way easier to criticize what's actually there. If it is between a game with no modes or not nearly as many modes like Gen 1 or even like by extension Fire Red Leaf Green and a game with cut modes but still has more modes or other gameplay elements like Gen 5, I would still have to say Gen 1's the worst.
Even when people bring up the topic of it being a product of its time, there are other video games that go alongside of it, like the first Super Mario Bros. That are a product of its time, but still have a lot of replay value with it. There's just Jules hit it right on the money. There's just not a lot to do in Kanto. There really isn't. You go through the base game, you beat it, then that's it. That's really it. And it's very infuriating to me because this is a Pokemon game that very much kickstarted the entire series, and they improved upon it. And I think it should be credited for that. But I also don't think it should be held into such a high esteem where we can't look at its shortcomings in the past and be like, hey, you know what? Maybe this game wasn't as good as I remember it when I was a kid. Because
Well, it was a global phenomenon, right?
it was.
So now to go on to the big topic that I'm most looking forward to, and I'm sure everyone else is which gen has the best Pokemon? And when we say Pokemon, referring to the design of the Pokemon themselves, the varieties, and then also like then at the actual Pokemon themselves, legendary starters, pseudos, whatever. So for me, honestly, it's between two for very different reasons. And I think I might shock you guys with what I say, honestly. I really think I got to go with Gen 4. And it's like a math equation that I'm crunching in my head right now. Starters plus legendaries plus pseudos equals this. And to me, the highest number I'm getting in my head of all the things I value the most in Pokemon, Gen 4 is what it comes down to. I think Gen 4 might not necessarily have the best lineup of starters, but it has a very strong lineup of starters. It has the most amount of legendaries. I personally really like Dialga and Palkia, and I really, really like Giratina in terms of the legendary. And then it also has like Regigigas is really cool. Darkrai's really awesome. Arceus is really awesome. And then the biggest thing I really, really like about Gen 4, the two biggest things actually, is they really brought their A game when it came to pre-evolutions, like bringing pre-evolution, so a new wave of baby Pokemon, and then an insanely huge wave of new evolutions for older Pokemon from Gen 1, 2, and 3. So, and like arguably one of my favorite Pokemon of all time, Gliscor, was added as a result of that. And then also, Garchomp, I think, might be the best pseudo legendary Pokemon as well, and he's still really popular today. And then, arguably one of the biggest Pokemon, period, Lucario, was added in Gen 4 as well. That, and then also, and a lot of this is coming from the fact that like Gen 4 was the only generation of Pokemon I went into completely blind. So when I saw a new Pokemon or whatever, it was a surprise to me. And that really impacts my sort of bias towards Gen 4 in a way. I don't know if bias is the right term, but like for me,
No, I think it is.
uh, I have to go with Gen 4, and I really wanted to say Gen 3, and I hope someone else says it, but maybe I can piggyback off that later. But Gen 4, I think, is the most consistent, and it has really, really high highs, and I don't think there's a lot of lows, and I feel like every generation of Pokemon does have some, like, that has a little bit of a detriment to its decks. So I'll let someone else talk now.
I was gonna say Gen 4, Matteo, so I was kind of hoping you were gonna talk about Gen 3. In all honesty.
I'm sorry, Gino. That's
Oh,
the third time I've done that.
yeah, no, it's okay. It's just that like our taste for a lot of video games is very similar, Matteo, because like growing up in the same household, right? Like we are going to share a lot of very similar views. And yeah, Gen 4, I'm not going to beat a dead horse on this one here. Yeah, it was great. Then the new evolutions for Pokemon was great. Like again, like the designs, even having legendaries like Regigigas that like threw back to like old legendary Pokemons with the Regis in the previous generation. It had ties to Gen 2 with the unknown, adding the unknown question mark and exclamation mark,
Oh, I
which was
forgot
kind
about
of
that. Yeah.
yeah, it was there was a lot of Gen 2 ties, so you can kind of see like where that one was going. And like there's something special about like those old pixel arts. Like for instance, like Pokemon that we thought were like super cool and everything based on their pixel art and like their little animations and things like that. Like when they got the 3D sprites, they weren't that cool afterwards. Like for instance, Shiny Weavile in the pixel art. Like it was a darker pink color.
Oh, so cool. Yeah, and now it's
Yeah,
crap.
and then like now it's like that really annoying pink color with the really
Oh,
like
the worst. One of my favorite Pokemon ruined.
but yeah, I'm gonna have to say Gen 4 for the same reasons that Matteo did.
All right, I guess I'm going to be the one that differentiates from the norm. I'm hard on Gen 3 for the best Pokemon inside the series. With the
Thank you.
introduction, yeah, I've been holding my tongue ever since he said that. But with
Yeah.
the reason why I pick it is because of the differentiation of abilities inside the game. Pokemon really had an opportunity to do a lot of freaky stuff with Generation 3. And they managed to do that quite a bit. You know, before with Pokemon games, we would just have, different designs of Pokemon that would center around, what they look like and just the general stat allocation of like, what this Pokemon generally is. But with the introduction of abilities, you could really create a Pokemon that has like a unique style that centers around its core design. A good example would be like the Slacking line, for instance, Slackoth, Vigoroth, and Slacking. You have a Pokemon that has insanely high stats, insanely high attack, defense, speed, and everything like that, comparable to a legendary. The Slacking stat allocation to a maximum was compared to Lugia and Ho-Oh in terms of total stats. And so it was like a very strong Pokemon that you could have inside the game, but the one downside is that it had an ability where it can only attack every other turn. And nothing like that was ever seen in a Pokemon game before. Another thing would be Shedinja and Ninjask. You have an exceptionally fast Pokemon where, and I'm speaking about this like how they use abilities to create the design of these Pokemon as well. Because you have Ninjask that basically evolves from Nincada, exceptionally fast and inspired off of like shinobi. I like shinobi ninjas and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really cool design in itself. But if you had a free slot when you evolved it, the shell of the Ninkata would then peel off and turn into a bug ghost type called Shedinja, which could only be damaged if the move was a super effective hit. Boom.
Oh, good old Wonder Guard.
Yeah. Yeah. But like something like that was never seen in a Pokemon game before. And
It only had
even
1 HP.
it only had 1 HP. So if you got that one hit, then you're done. If you got status in, then if you got any kind of like burn or toxic in, then the Pokemon was dead. But still, a very interesting design. I can name all these iconic Pokemon from Gen 3 just off the top of my head. The 3 starters, Sceptile, Blaziken, Swampert. You have Ludicolo, of course. You can't forget the sombrero watergrass duck. You have Breloom, you have Hariyama, you have Sableye, you have Aggron, Salamence, Metagross. You just have all these different Pokemon that kind of kept that with Gen 1. Every half of the Pokemon felt like a dinosaur, and then the other half of the Pokemon just kind of felt like common house pets. And then there was a small percentage where it kind of just felt like, oh, we're just gonna have this thing and then put a face on it.
As opposed to Hariyama, which just looks like bread.
I mean, yeah.
Right hand.
Yeah, I'm not denying that. Gen 2 definitely expanded upon that, although I don't believe they did as good of a job with differentiation with Pokemon, because they introduced pre-evolutions, which is really good, which is a really nice thing at that time. But every Pokemon kind of either felt like a plant of something or an animal of something, as opposed to actually having these pocket monsters that are very differentiating from each other. With Gen 3, I feel like they do a very good job with the design of the Pokemon, with the way that it looks, and with the way that they act. It felt as if they got the good aspects of 1 and 2 and then put them together and added a little bit of spice to them that just really pops out. And even, looking into the further generations, 4 is fantastic with a lot of its designs, especially as mentioned before with the added evolutions for a lot of the older Pokemon from the previous generations. That's a great idea. But I feel like Gen 3 has to have that pedestal for really kicking the Pokemon series into that higher gear of differentiation, of uniqueness with different Pokemon, as opposed to making them look similar to one another, essentially.
I
Okay.
agree. I agree 100%. Gen 3 was my pick, and I just was, while you guys were talking, I was scrolling through all the Pokemon, even looking at like the starters. Like, everyone loves Sceptile and Blaziken, and although Swampert doesn't get a lot of love, everyone loves Mudkip. So, like, with the 3 there, you're pretty good. That it actually has some of my favorite Pokemon in terms of them just being visually appealing. Like, I love how Crawdaunt looks. I don't know why. I just have always liked the look of Crawdaunt, and I love Melodic. And looking down, going past the pseudos, just straight up at the legendaries like Latias, Latios, Kyogre, Groudon, Rayquaza, Jirachi, and Deoxys, they're just designed so well. Like Kyogre and Groudon, especially because they were the mascots, they still have that same vibe based on like the markings on them, yet they represent 2 completely different things. And Rayquaza kind of as the third, they just mesh so well, and I just feel like Game Freak and Pokemon Company did an excellent job designing these Pokemon. Even like the fossil Pokemon, Cradily and Armaldo, like just everything was designed so well. Swablu, Altaria, just Flygon as an example. Flygon is like a design of a Pokemon that could have been a pseudo,
Yeah,
Mhm.
my Flygon is my favorite actual Pokemon of all time.
right? Like it's
Not to
crazy.
not to mention his pre-evolutions as well, because it kind of just takes a 180
That
when you
entire
have
line is just
Yeah.
really
Trapinch,
good.
yeah.
Like they did an excellent job. So I agree. I would go with Gen 3.
So it's my turn to speak, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So first, I'm going to rebuttal to Giancarlo and Joe before I begin mine. And all I'm going to say is I'm not going to say anything but names. Hariyama, Delicati, Illumise, Swalot, Spinda, Clamperl, Gorbis, Love Disc. Like, I'm sorry. Glalie, I can't get behind Gen 3's
How
designs.
dare you talk about Glalie in a bad way? Glalie's
It-
awesome.
Yeah, but you said Clamperl, but
Jeez.
Huntail.
The Reggies,
Every gen has stinkers, though. That's the thing,
What's
though.
wrong with the
there's
Reggies?
a hell of a lot of stinkers in Gen 3, that's all I'll say. There's some fire in Gen 3. That I can admit that. There's some fire Pokemon Gen 3. Some of my favorite Pokemon are from Gen 3.
There's fire
but there's
Pokemon
a
in every
hell
gen,
of a
Jules.
lot of stinkers. But anyway, I'm gonna have the most controversial one by far. Like 100% by far. And let me speak before you react.
All right.
Oh no.
I firmly believe that the best Pokemon designs are in Gen 7.
No.
Alola, shh,
Let him talk.
quiet. Gen 7, of all the things it did bad, did not do its Pokemon bad. All of its starters are fucking fire. In my opinion, the best trio of starters comes from Gen 7, and I firmly believe the only reason people have an issue with Incineroar or with Primarina is because they're gendered. Women tend to have a problem with Incineroar because they don't like how it's a male aesthetic. Men tend to have a problem with Primarina because they don't like how it's a female aesthetic. But both of them are awesome designs. They do what they're supposed to do, and there's a theme there, and they're all well designed. Then you got the introduction of Alolan variants, which was incredible and one of the best things that Game Freak ever decided to do. And you got some awesome designs there. Alolan Executor is hilarious and just one of the coolest things. You got Alolan Marowak is this awesome concept. Alolan Ninetales and Vulpix and Sandslash, they're so cute. And sure, there's some stinkers like Alolan Persian, but what are you going to do? Like you said, every gen has some stinkers. But then you also got some other fire ones like later on. Like you got Toucanon is one of the coolest regional birds, like by far. Typing, not the greatest, but in terms of design, pure design, fucking awesome. Vikavolt. Lycanroc is one of the coolest Pokemon, like period. Like
Which
hands
form?
down. All forms. They're all cool. Wishy-Washy, Araquanid, Beware, Palisand, Silvally, Type Null. The only like Mimikyu and even the legendaries, as much as I don't like the concept behind like an evolving legendary, I think Lunala and Solgaleo have amazing designs. The only real demerit on Gen 7 is the Ultra Beasts, which I can of course admit are bad. But I think like some of my favorite Pokemon come from Gen 7. I think the designs are fire. But if I wasn't gonna go with my controversial Gen 7 pick, I'm sorry, I do have to go with the classic, which is Gen 1. And I disagree on every fundamental level of what Giancarlo said. Like I don't think that Gen 1 is like samey. I actually think it's just very natural. Like the designs are natural things. Like they're not trying to do anything overly complicated. There's no ghost that's inhabiting a key. They're just like these just things that look like they exist in nature for the most part. And they're simple, but there's a reason why Gen 1 designs are still persistent nowadays, and that's because they are well done. So I do think I like Gen 7 the best. And I think if Gen 7 had been the first Pokemon generation, it would. I think it's the only other generation of Pokemon that I can firmly say if it was the first generation, it would be just as successful as the first generation was. Whereas I think every other one, if it was the first one, would not have been as well received.
Well,
So,
there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack there. How do you guys actually want to proceed with this? Because basically, we've had two people say Gen 3, two people say Gen 4, and then Jules said Gen 7. Or do you want to go into the worst first? Because like I know for sure we're gonna
I
have
think
some
we're all gonna
opinions
say the same.
about
Yeah.
the worst gens of Pokemon. Because
Well,
and that might actually impact what we end up voting for the best.
Matteo, I do want to
So
interject here because you said before you could flip flop between 4 and 3. I can also flip flop between 4 and 3.
I'm not gonna flip flop though.
I could
Like-
flip flop between 4 and 3. It's a coin toss between those two. Like they're both really, really strong.
I could flip flop to 1 because I understand what Giuliano's saying for the fact that you really got to think if, first of all, if the design of the first generation of Pokemon, just overall, if the first generation of Pokemon was garbage, it would, one, it wouldn't be here today, or two, they would have tried releasing Gen 2, and Gen 2 would have caught on a lot hotter than Gen 1 did. We would be seeing a lot more Gen 2 Pokemon in than Gen 1. So there actually is a true reason, more than even our opinions, like just the straight up numbers of why technically Gen 1 would be that would have the best Pokemon. It's because they're the ones that were actually able to handle the test of time.
Yeah.
And people get excited about when new things happen to them. It's like the opposite. It's like Gen 1 got knocked down for it not, standing the test there, but the Pokemon definitely did. I could flip flop to 1, but yeah.
And like I personally think, like I said, I have like this equation where I made in my head that I made for picking the starters or picking the favorite Pokemon. Gen 1, I think aside from Gen 3 has the best starter lineup period. And also all the there wasn't a lot of legendaries in Gen 1, but they're all really good. Snorlax is awesome. Scyther's awesome. Electabuzz is awesome. Like Nidoking's line, Gengar, Alakazam, Gyarados,
Machamp.
Dragonite. Like there's so many
Birds.
awesome Pokemon. Like they all of them have stood the test of time. Basically,
Well,
like even
not
shit
all
like
of them.
Drowsy and Hypno, I'm not a fan of, but like I
Do you
don't
want me to
hate
tell
them.
you? Do you want me to tell you the single worst Pokemon in Gen 1? The single most forgettable and least test of time Pokemon in Gen 1? I can name it right now.
If you say Jigglypuff, you die.
I'm not gonna say Jigglypuff. It's Fearow.
Yeah.
Fearow
But
is the
Fearow
single
isn't even
most
bad,
boring,
though.
and he's not even bad. And that's what I mean. He's not even a
Exactly.
bad Pokemon, but he's like
I
easily
think-
the single most forgettable, least used like Pokemon from Gen 1.
It's because
Yeah.
he's alongside Pidgeotto, which is already
And Venomoth. Venomoth is another one. And Paris.
Venomoth and Butterfree should have been swapped.
The Venomoth is recognized quite a bit.
Yeah, but like even at that, even if those were to like be forgettable and stuff, they're not even bad. So, and I honestly can say that about Gen 1. Like, I think when I said about every gen has stinkers, like Gen 1 probably is the least amount. And that actually means something because there's 151 Pokemon there. I think honestly I'm sold on Gen 1, to be honest with you. And I don't think that's like a cop out type thing. Like I think that's a legitimate like strength of that
It
generation.
is. Yeah, and like I said, like I think Gen 1 is there, and for your guys's, like I do have a very strong opinion of Gen 4 Pokemon. Gen 3 I do as well, but me flip-flopping to Gen 3 is also very dependent on what this group comes up with as their worst one, because I want us to be consistent. And if what I think is going to happen with the worst generation happens, then I think Gen 3 absolutely should not be our best generation. And I will explain that after we do the worst one.
Well, I'm fine saying Gen 1 is the best, honestly. I can sleep with that. Like I
Me
think
too.
that's
I was
really
I was prepared to say Gen 1 is the best, but I feel like it would be like such a
It's
not a cop out.
Gino, I don't think it
doesn't feel
is.
genuine.
Really.
It doesn't feel
I don't think it's
genuine in my
cop-out.
opinion.
Gen 2 was my first generation of Pokemon, so like I don't have that I have a nostalgia for Gen 1, but it's not as strong, right?
Like, okay, so I understand why you might feel it's a cop-out, Giancarlo, but here's my thing, okay?
Oh no, I don't
So
consider it a cop
No,
out.
that was me that said that.
Oh, I thought... What did you say, Giancarlo?
Giancarlo said he thinks it's genuine.
It wouldn't be a genuine answer for me to say that it's the best generation. I don't think it's the worst, but
Oh,
like
yeah.
I
And
don't
that's
think it's-
fair.
yeah.
But here's my thing, and this is what I'm going to say about Gen 1. Matteo and Gino made good arguments for Gen 4. Gen 4 is only as successful as it is because it built on previous gens, and a lot of what it built on was Gen 1. So
And
without
Gen 2.
Gen 1, Gen 4, yes, a bit of Gen 2, but a lot of it was Gen 1. And so without Gen 1, I don't think Gen 4 would have been as successful. 2, Gen 3, I understand the argument of, oh, it's different, and like that makes it good, and blah, blah, blah. And like I can get behind that. But I also know, especially among this group, that for the like I don't like the hypocrisy of everybody's like Gen 3 was trying to be different. It was different and that's good, but then it's also like Gen 5 was also trying to be different. Everybody's like that's bad. So I just won't sit well if people are going to trash on Gen 5's designs but boost up Gen 3's cuz to me they're from the exact same breed of like I personally think that they're the exact same thing. Like Gen 5 and Gen 3 to me are interchangeable in terms of what they tried to do with Pokemon designs. And I think they're on equal playing fields, although Gen 3 did some things better and Gen 5 did some things better.
I will say that the Gen, like, if we're okay, like, based on, like, I guess we can go talk about the worst ones before we decide what our best one is, because this is the last thing we're going to talk about.
Yeah,
right?
let's
So
just go
let's
into
save
it.
the best
Let's
for
just
last.
go into
Yeah.
it.
So, for me, when I think of, like, a worst generation or a badly designed Pokemon, that's the thing, though. Like, every gen has their stinkers, but Gen 5 has more stinkers than any other gen. And I'm not saying that because, like, okay, we have literal ice cream Pokemon. We have things like Almomola. It should have been an evolution for Love Disc. I don't understand why it wasn't. But
'Cause
like
Love This is crap.
then we have
That's
that weird Beheeyem, and you have the fish Pokemon that everyone forgets in there and stuff as well. Like there's a lot of forgettable stuff. There's also a lot of stuff that just like a lot of people don't
I think
like.
the fish Pokemon everyone forgets is Gen 7.
No, it's not.
I think he's
It's
referring to
the
Basculin.
No, Basculin, yeah.
Basculin.
Oh, that's
yeah.
But Gen 5 also has some slammers like the
Volcarona's
mascots are
awesome.
awesome. Volcarona, Hydreigon, like
I don't like
Braviary, and
I don't like the dog things, the
Landor,
horses. I
Hexorus.
don't like any of them.
Really,
Except for Keldeo.
they're modeled after the Three Musketeers as well.
They're stupid. They
the
look really dumb.
Zoroark.
Here's the thing,
And like Conkeldurr, like, and them, like, I don't like that fighting line. It's just like there's a lot of Pokemon in Gen 5 that I like. The ones in Gen 5 that I really, really, really don't like. It also has Pokemon that I really, 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 really do like, and that's the thing. There's no like middle ground Pokemon. It's either like you either like them or you don't.
yeah. Well, there's like a lot of meh Pokemon in the line, but I feel like at
And like
least
the
in my
starters are
personal
garbage, except for Oshawott. I really like Oshawott.
Oshawott's really good. I don't know. I really like Snivy.
Now,
And
I
the
feel like
superior
we've
line.
lost all sense of speaking order here, which is okay because I feel like it's just like. But I don't know, man. Like you can say Gen 5 has a lot of stinkers, and it does. Like I'll admit that. Like Gen 5 does have a lot of stinkers, just like I think Gen 3 has a lot of stinkers. But I also think it outweighs that with like having a lot of really really cool ones, just like Gen 3 does. Like it has some really just cool Pokemon. And I don't think Gen 5 is the worst because Gen 6 exists. And honestly, go look at Gen 6's line of Pokemon. Gen 6 has like 5 Pokemon that look cool. It has barely any Pokemon to start. Like let's start with that. There's barely any Pokemon in Gen 6 and like 5 of them are cool. And most of them aren't viable because most of them are just 2-stage Pokemon.
Plus, it's
Yeah.
one of the
Honestly-
shortest lines as
honest-
well, isn't it?
Honestly, though, I actually really like Gen 6. I think the only really bad Pokemon in Gen 6 are like Aromatisse and Slurpuff. But Furfro's just a one stage. Like it's just a generic dog.
Okay,
Like, who
Furfrou,
cares?
Meowstic, Florges,
Who
the
remembers?
fairy
Meowstic's
ones,
I like
Who remembers
Meowstic.
Pyroar?
the Barnacle, Malamar, Dragalge.
No,
Esper.
Dragalge is awesome. I
Yeah,
like
Malamar's
Dragalge is
cool.
not cool. Dragalge
Malamar's
is
Gen
awful.
5.
Dragalge.
No, Malamar is Gen
Dragalge.
6,
Gen
dude.
6.
Oh, no,
Upside down one, that's Gen
Dragalge
5.
is cool.
That is Gen 6. I'm
Okay, and
looking
then-
at the Gen
and then,
6
like-
list right now.
And then after that, after you said Barbaracle, the last one on Gen 5 that I will tell you is not good. Carbink,
Carbuncle. Carbink.
Carbink,
Yeah.
and then Avalugg, and that's
Klefki,
it. Honestly, no,
Avalugg,
I like Klefki.
Klefki's fucking amazing.
Pumpkaboo.
Pumpkaboo's
good.
cool. I like it because
Klefki's
it has
annoying.
different.
Is
like you can get
Pumpkaboo
cool because you can get multiple sizes of Pumpkaboo.
Okay, but here's the thing:
That's
is
a
you
cool
can,
thing with
okay,
it.
fine. You can argue that Pumpkaboo's cool, but if you're gonna say Pumpkaboo is one of the good Pokemon in Gen 6, and
No,
you're
I'm
gonna
just
put
saying
it up,
it's not bad. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's good.
But
I'm just saying it's an average.
okay,
design.
but there's plenty of average in Gen 5 too. Like there's plenty of stuff on Pumpkaboo's level in Gen 5. Plenty of stuff.
but that's the issue is that most things in Gen 6 are above Pumpkaboo's level.
I don't think that's the case.
No, there's a lot of stuff that's below Pumpkin Booth level and on par with
Vivillon,
Do you remember Pyroar in the game?
Pyro's
Yeah.
really cool.
It's a great design
Mhm.
Pyro's
Pokemon.
cool.
Did
I like Pyro.
Noivern,
the one
Aegislash,
Aegislash is
Uh,
amazing. The
Tangoro,
Skidoo and
Tyrantrum.
Talonflame, Greninja.
Sure,
Like,
and
the
like
starters are
those
really
ones are
good,
cool,
except for Chestnut.
but they're
The
on the same
legendaries is what
level.
makes Gen 6 suffer, in my opinion, but it's not like it doesn't suffer to the point where I would say it's the worst generation. To me,
But
honestly, I don't think Gen 5 is the worst. And I came to this epiphany today during this discussion. I think Gen 7 is the worst in terms of designs.
No,
Starters
you know.
aside, okay? I'm a bit sour with I like Vikavolt's design, but they messed up its stats. Crabominable should be Crabomination, should be its name, okay? I don't like Toxapex. Mudsdale is awful. Salazzle, I don't like what they did with Salandit in that gen. Beware is generic. Like, I don't care about Bounce Sweet's line. I don't care about Comfy. Oranguru should have had a pre-evolution. Passimian should have had an evolution. Pukumuku is fine, I guess, but like Komala, I was so excited to see what Komala was going to evolve into, and it didn't. Why didn't Komala?
At
Why doesn't
least there's a
Komala
big.
have an
But the thing
evolution?
is, if you look at
Bruxish is
quantity,
awful. Drampa is awful. Delmise is awful. And then
yes, there's some bad ones. I agree, but if you look at the quantity of good ones,
Oricorio's dumb.
the biggest thing with Gen 7 is, I think, honestly, the fact that the legendary Pokemon can evolve. I don't like that at all. And all the Ultra Beasts are terrible. I cannot like live with in a world where Ultra Beasts exist. Like, if Poipole, Poipole's evolves, which I don't like. It's legendary that evolves, but like,
Poibole isn't legendary. Ultra Beasts aren't legendary.
well, the Ultra Beasts still, I don't like the concept of them. I just don't like the way they look. The only
And I agree with you.
The only good looking legendaries aside from Solgaleo and Lunala is Zerora. Honestly, like, everything else is like, it's.
I agree with you. I'm just, when I look at what's a good Pokemon design, I don't look internally. Like, I don't look at, like, I'm looking at Gen 6's list, for example, right now. And I'm like, yeah, some of these are better than the others. Some of these are good Pokemon designs. But if I take something like Pyroar and I compare it to the whole of Pokemon, I no longer think he's a good design Pokemon. I think he's an average Pokemon. And that's why I like Gen 7, is because, sure, Gen 7's got a lot of fucking stinkers, but it also has a lot of Pokemon that you can pull out of Gen 7 and compare it to designs from across the series and be like, damn, this is a fucking awesome design. Decidueye is honestly, I still argue Decidueye might possibly be the best final starter evolution design, period. Like, it is up there with Charizard and with Blaziken. Like, it is a cool fucking design. Lycanroc, all three versions, really fucking cool. Like, really fucking well designed Pokemon. Like,
I'm
there's
gonna-
Are we going to take their
straight up.
stats and stuff
I'm gonna say
into
straight.
account also?
Yeah. Well,
no,
good.
that stats are gameplay things. I think we're more focusing on design and stuff.
If I'm going to be straight up over here, kind of just adding on to Jules, in my opinion, I think Golisopod is like one of the best designed Pokemon.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like a very intimidating and very like foreboding and interesting Pokemon, especially for a bug type.
Hey,
Like,
guys, we're actually sleeping on one of the gens that we haven't mentioned.
Too.
I know. I know.
I was
want to.
gonna
We
mention
should. Yeah, but just quickly with Gen 7, the last thing I want to say about it, aside from like, because Jules mentioned the Alolan forms, I wasn't a big fan of like half of the Alolan forms, like Meowth, Persian, Geodude's lines. Such a missed opportunity, in my opinion. I would have preferred they had Cubone and Marowak as well, but like, whatever. The other the thing that really bothered me the most with Gen 7 is that I went through that game and I struggled to build a team in that game, and I've never struggled to build a team, because every generation I want to use Pokemon that are only from that generation for my first playthrough, and The only way I was able to do that is if I was to import multiple starters, which I really didn't like doing, but that was the only way I could have built a team of 6 that I really cared about. And I've never had to do that in any other Pokemon game except for Sun and Moon. So
I had that problem too.
Interesting. See, I had the opposite. Sun and Moon, I was the first game where I had both versions, and even after filling both my teams, I was like, damn, there's still more Pokemon I want to try out because there was a lot of cool Pokemon.
Don't get me wrong.
That's
like
the thing.
I
There's
wanted
a lot of
Jangmo-o, but
crappy
Jangmo-o
Pokemon.
wasn't available until late in the game. But then Komoa, I saw its design, and I'm like, not that fond of the design. Like Turtonator was really hard to get and didn't have it was just a basic Pokemon. Like that's the thing. There was too many Pokemon that should have had a pre-evolution or should have evolved, and I feel like that really hurts it. And then just all, like I said, with the Ultra Beasts, I despise Primarina, and it's not for the reason Jules said. Like I just don't think it looks good. It's just too busy of a design for a starter, in my opinion. And then the evolving legendaries is just, I feel like that's such a odd thing to do that I just don't see the purpose of it, honestly. Like, who gives a shit if you have a Pokemon that could evolve into either legendary? Like, I just don't see the value in doing that. If anything, like now people might want to see what evolves into Mewtwo or something like that. Like I think a legendary should be at its highest power like level from the start. It shouldn't have to grow into that. Like I think it defeats the purpose of having a legendary Pokemon if when it's at its smallest form, it's not truly legendary in terms of power. It's only legendary because it's rare. So that's my 2 cents about Gen 7.
Well, do you guys know how they came up with the designs for Gen 5?
They threw
Where did
darts
they
at
go
a
looking
board
for
and
it,
whatever
Joe?
pictures it landed on.
Well, they just picked names out of a garbage bag, and then they just kind of picked designs and said, "Oh, let's do a little crocodile thing," and then Sandile
Hey,
came to be. And then what
Sandile's
happened at the
awesome.
end? You know what happened
You
at the end?
talk about Sandile. Sandile's a fantastic
Do
Pokemon.
you know what happened at the end? They ran out of paper, and they said, "Oh, a garbage bag. I'll make Garbodor." That's how Garbodor was formed.
Garbodor is awesome, Joe.
Last I'm gonna say is the Pokemon in Gen 5 are so shit that half the time when I play Pokemon, all the new gens, I see Gen 5 Pokemon and I don't even remember that they exist because it's been repressed in my memory. I'll literally have to look up the Pokemon to realize it was in Gen 5 because it's that forgettable.
Listen, I wouldn't say Gen 5. I wouldn't say Gen 5 is the best for its generations, but it's certainly not the worst.
I agree.
There is a
Definitely
lot.
not the worst.
There's still a lot of good design. They
Look
had
at the legendaries. There's nothing there. They look
Yeah,
like big
there is.
blobs. It looks like
What are you talking about?
one looks like snow, and one looks like someone dropped black paint on the ground.
Did you not listen to Jules when he gave the explanation to what
Reshiram and Zoro and
they're very
Reshiram and Zekrom are some of the coolest looking Pokemon of all time.
in Kiriga?
Oh, I'm sorry, Reshiram, Zekrom, and whatever the other one is.
Irem looks like
Same
stupid.
Same
I
with the
agree.
Storm Pokemon.
Well, it's supposed to,
Tornadus, Thunderous,
supposed
and
to
whatever
be-
the other one is.
But they're based
They
off of
go.
legends. Like
Yeah,
that's
Legends.
what I like.
No,
That-
I
that's-
don't like them. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
They are terrible.
Did you actually know that Embor is actually based off of a Chinese legend from the book known as Romance of the Three Kingdoms? He's based
Really,
off
because I thought Ambor was based off of that thing I left in the toilet bowl about an hour ago.
That's
No.
shiny Embor.
Embor is not great. The third
Ambor is
when
the
they got
worst starter
when
of
they
all time.
decided to
I
make
get that. I
when they
get that.
decided to make a third straight firefighting type, I don't know. But we haven't even talked about Gen 2 or Gen 8. Like
I don't think Gen 8 is the worst. I don't think that needs to even be discussed.
I don't like a lot of about Gen 8, but it's definitely not. There's
Yeah.
definitely some good Pokemon.
I was
out
hoping no one thought that because I'm Gen 8's solid.
And you know what? I've even been looking through the Gen 2 Pokemon, and I don't think Gen 2 is the worst either. Like Gen 2 is a bit plain, but there's nothing that's like bad. Like I do think that our worst one is coming from the later gens. Like
I still
Um,
think it's either 5 or 7.
Yeah. I'm
as
on,
much as like
I'm
there
more
are
on,
Pokemon
I'm
that
more
I
on
love.
6 than 5.
Yeah, I think it's 6. I like I said, I can't in good faith agree that Gen 5 is bad if people think Gen 3 is good because they have the exact same thing. They're just trying to be very different, and some of them are stinkers and some of them aren't. And then Gen 7, I genuinely think Gen 7 has incredible Pokemon. Like, yes, it has some of the worst Pokemon in there too, but like Gen 7 has quite a number of like phenomenal designs. And Gen 6 just in all honesty has some good
Gen 6
ones.
does too.
Nothing's
No,
great.
like
I so
yeah,
hardly disagree with you.
but what's amazing from please tell me in Gen 6 other than like in terms of actual like top tier, if we're talking about the top 50 Pokemon designs, how many of those come from Gen 6 other than maybe
Greninja.
Greninja and like maybe if you really want to push it, like Tyrantrum.
No more than Gen 5. That's the whole point. And Gen 3 and Gen
No,
5 are not equivalent
Volcarona,
at
That's
all.
not more than
Volcarona, dude,
Hexerus,
Volcarona is
Reshiram, and
is
Cure and
Reshiram and
Zekrom.
Zekrom are
Even if you
incredible
even if
designs.
you don't like them, they are iconic.
for Gen 6,
Braviary.
I'd put Talonflame. I think Talonflame's the best regional bird. That or
Oh,
Corviknight,
Talonflame.
honestly.
Oh, I hate Talonflame.
I love Talonflame.
Alflame's great.
I
I
like his
love
typing. I hate his design.
I love Pangoro. I love Aegislash. I love Tyrantrum. I love Halucha. Really
Joe
like
loves
Goodra.
Gudra.
Trevenant's really cool. Like
They're
Noivern's
middle of
awesome.
the pack. They're but no. I'm again like I'm not saying that these Pokemon are bad designs, but I'm sorry, Noivern and Trevenant aren't even close to being some of the best Pokemon designs. They're good for within their own generation, but outside of their generation, they're not great designs.
But
Like
like Gen
Lycan,
7 doesn't
like
have that either though. Like
Lycanroc
Decidueye and
and
Incineroar,
Decidueye
okay.
We just went over what?
Lycanroc.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
Lycanroc.
Solgaleo.
Lycanroc, Decidueye,
I do
Golisopod,
not think
Golisopod.
I don't think Solgaleo or Lunala. I would give you maybe Golisopod, but like that's 4.
I'd give Golisopod. Golisopod is
And
good.
we just talked about like 7 in Gen 6 right there.
But Matteo, we're talking about taking ones outside of the context of their own gens.
All right.
Like, and Gen 6
Then-
doesn't have a lot.
Okay, but then for Gen 7, you have to discount for that. You have to discount Incineroar, Decidueye,
Why?
and
Incineroar
Lycanroc.
is. But
Because if
why
we're not going to
Incineroar
consider,
There is a
because
reason
if
why
we're not
he's in
gonna-
the
No, but
top
we're saying
rows.
no, but we're saying. But what I'm saying is taking context out of their own gens. I'm saying they're not only good within their gens. They're good even when you pit them against the entirety of all of Pokemon. Like
yeah, I
Decidueye,
legitimately
Incineroar, and
the
Lycanroc are
ones I said in
fantastic
Gen
designs.
6, I legitimately would
Like
pit
I
those.
would not. Okay, if you took the top
Sylveon as
5.
well, like
Okay, I mean,
Yeah.
like if you took the top 5 designs from Gen 6 and pit them against the top 5 from Gen 7, I just don't think they're even comparable because Gen 7 has Mimikyu, it has fucking Decidueye, it has fucking Alolan Ninetales. Like these are Pokemon that literally broke fucking like they have become so fucking popular. Like people hate Gen 7, but those 3 Pokemon and Incineroar are insanely popular. Like
Yes.
Mimikyu is arguably the single most popular Pokemon since fucking Eevee. I will straight up argue that.
Since
Mimikyu
Greninja,
is
I'd say. That's where since
and
Greninja.
Greninja. Okay,
there was
Greninja.
and
Fair
Lucario.
enough. Greninja's
Yeah,
up there
exactly.
and Lucario. Fine, I'll give you that.
Every generation
you that.
has that one standout Pokemon that like transcends their generation.
Not Gen
Every
5.
single one.
Except for Gen 5.
Zoroark. Zoroark did.
But
Zoroark.
then they're not to the
No,
same level.
No, Zoroark was only Zoroark's only popular because Pokemon Company tried to market him like Lucario and like Greninja, but he never actually got popular. He's like not that popular. Gen 3 doesn't have one either.
Gen 3 is Jirachi.
And Blaziken.
I wanna go back to the Gen 7 thing. Like an entire selling feature of this game was Ultra Beasts and how cool they are, and they weren't.
Was it
That's
a big?
like that's like
was it
10,
a selling
12
point?
Pokemon. How many Ultra Beasts are there? They're like a good, I want to say, good chunk of your decks. Maybe
But I
like
don't think they
10,
were
20% of
sold
the
as
decks.
cool. I think they were sold as weird.
Yeah.
but it was a major selling feature of the thing, and they represent 10
I don't
to 20%
think it
of
was,
the decks.
Oh wait,
There's
sorry,
10
a
of
selling
Gen
feature of
7.
what though?
There's
Of
10
Gen
of them.
7.
Yeah, but you know
No.
what?
They were unveiled way after, no?
No, they were unveiled. They were unveiled early, but they were never unveiled as like this is a reason to buy the game. They were just like, look at this fucking weird thing. What could this be?
Yeah.
But then how about Gen 2? So if you're gonna say that 12 Ultra Beasts make up all those designs, doesn't then like 25% of Gen 2's designs is unknowns? It's just eyeballs that look like letters,
No, but Unknown was one Pokemon.
but it's 27 designs.
But it's one Pokemon. It takes up one slot on your decks. Unknown, they added an extra 100 Pokemon to it. Of those 100 Pokemon, 25 of them aren't unknown. One of them is unknown. But like, this is just more us like talking kind of back and forth about like what our personal favorites are and stuff. Like, there are stinkers, there are winners. Some generations have more stinkers. Like, if I'm looking at something like, for instance, if I'm going to go into a new generation of Pokemon, and if I don't like 20% of the Pokemon on that list, as well as 20 like of the majority else of that game, I'm not going to like it, right? So
Well, I just think ultimately my big thing with Gen 6 is it's every gen, like you said, has stinkers and everyone has good ones. The reason Gen 6 bothers me is because it's just there's barely any Pokemon. There's barely any Pokemon and they're not that great. Like, I think you could argue Gen 5, Gen 6, or Gen 7 are all around the same area. But the big thing for me in Gen 6 is there's no fucking variety because there's no fucking Pokemon. And almost all of them are 2-stage Pokemon in Gen 6. And that bothers me because there's barely any 3-stage. Like, barely any. There's barely any Pokemon because they chose to focus on Megas, which sure is fine. And you could count that to the designs of Gen 6 as like a reason, but like in terms of just new Pokemon, I just can't do it.
And like two other things for like why I think Gen 7 is the worst, to be honest with you, is like, first of all, like you said, Gen 6 has a lot of 2 stages. Gen 7 has a lot of single stage out Pokemon that just don't evolve, period. And like, what's the fun of having a Pokemon on your team that just doesn't evolve?
I
Like,
agree. I
and
don't disagree.
the other thing is, and I know this is super fucking nerdy, like weird ass flex on my part, but I can probably, if you showed me a picture of like of a Pokemon, I could probably name it for you. But you know what Pokemon I can't name because they're just too obscure that I literally wouldn't. I'm unable to tell you the names for the Ultra Beasts.
Yeah,
Those
I
designs are so terrible that I just can't even think of their name. When you showed me a picture of it, I cannot name you a single Ultra Beast. Like, I think that's pretty sad, to be honest.
You literally named one early. You said Poiple.
But is Poiple an Ultra
And
Beast?
Yeah.
yeah, so is Solgaleo and so is Lunala.
Yeah. Poiple's
See, I
an
did not know
Ultra
that. The only reason I would know Poiple is because of the event that we got the shiny one in. But like the other ones that are like, I know some are exclusive to a game, some aren't. Like, and the whole thing, like, I cannot stand Ultra Beast, and just think the fact that their presence on the Pokedex is so huge that if like you have that huge portion of your Pokedex devoted to single stage Pokemon and Ultra Beast, like that's not great, honestly. And if you take all those out, you're basically at the exact same amount of Pokemon that Gen 6 had. I think it's
Okay.
basically the same. So
Okay.
Can I just say, Gen 7 does house, in my opinion, the ugliest Pokemon in the entire series.
It
Crap.
does.
what Bruxish?
Crabominable.
Oh,
No, it's
Crabomination's there,
Bruxish.
yeah.
Bruxish is by far worse.
Drampa
No.
is not great either.
No, I can't
Dude,
stand
Bruxish.
Crabominable does not work as a Pokemon. I can't fit it on with a
I
team.
love
Crabrawler
Crabominable.
looks so cool. I remember
Yeah.
being hyped when I saw Crabrawler. And then look what he turns into.
It's just
I love Crabominable.
I just don't see how a crab could turn into an abominable snowman. Like, I just don't see
It's
the
not. It's a crab
corpora-
and it's an abominable snowman.
But where does the ice typing come from?
it's
You're in the
Pokedex-
Alola region. It's supposed to be hot.
its Pokedex entry states that it climbs up a mountain and hardens its body to like make it a better fighter, and then it evolves into
Oh gosh.
a woolly crab Pokemon.
That
But like,
no one wants to ever look at.
No.
Okay.
Nobody.
Anyway, I think we really need to just deliberate
Yeah.
and I think
that's
at this
what we've been
point
trying to do.
I'll concede at this point. Like I feel like that's the only way this is going to get done. I'll concede Gen 7 can be determined as the worst one, I guess, even though it was my favorite one, but whatever, like
I don't agree with bashing on Gen 5 and Gen 7, but I'll deliberate on Gen 7 as well.
I'll make another PowerPoint for next time.
Joe, you got every time you come back, you got to add.
Gotta keep
you
adding
gotta,
to that
you gotta bring a
PowerPoint.
PowerPoint with you. So if we are going to say, so wait, we haven't even said what is our best as well.
Yeah.
I
Oh
feel like
gosh.
we've settled on Gen 1.
We will be saying Gen 1 is the best in terms of Pokemon design. Gen 7 is the worst in terms of Pokemon design. We should do a quick recap, and then we'll do a rapid fire of our favorite generations, and we'll call it for today for this special 2-part episode. So we decided for our best region, we decided was the Sinnoh region. The worst region was the Alola region. The best story we gave to the Unova region, Pokemon Gen 5. The worst story we gave to Gen 7. The best gameplay we gave to Gen 6. The worst gameplay we gave to Gen 1. The best Pokemon was given to Gen 1. The worst Pokemon was given to Gen 7. So now, as a closing little segment, we will rank our generations from worst to best and then close off the episode. So I'll start, and surprise, surprise, my least favorite generation of Pokemon is Generation 7. My 7th favorite is Gen 1. My 6th favorite is Gen 5. 5th favorite is Gen 8. I have at number 4 is Gen 2. Number 3 I have is Gen 6. 2 is Gen 4. And 1 is Gen 3. And depending on how the Diamond and Pearl remakes go and Legends Arceus, I might be putting Gen 4 at number 1. So that is my list as it stands.
See, I don't have like a top to bottom 1 through 8. I know what my favorite is, and I know what my least favorite is. All the rest are kind of like
In there. Yeah.
yeah. So like
That's okay. You can just share that.
yeah, like my number 1 probably is Gen 4, just because it's the Pokemon game that I had the most fun with. I guess Gen 2 and Gen 6 would be my second favorite. Like it really depends, right? Because I spent a lot of time in Gen 6 also, like building teams and like doing a lot of stuff with the megas and things. And Gen 2, like Heart Gold, Soul Silver, really reinforced my love for Gen 2, because that's like of like the Game Boy games, that's the one that I spent the most time in. My least favorite is Gen 7, just because, as I said before, it's a vacation from the series. They tried doing something new, and yeah, it's not good, in my opinion.
To no surprise that people know me personally, I'm kind of going on the same route as Gino, while also adding an honorable mention for my second favorite. Most people who know me personally knows that I have a vehement hatred for Gen 8, so I'm gonna just slide that right there as my answer for my least favorite. It's because of personal reasons, including game design, not just just because I have a hatred for that. And my top favorite has to be Gen 4, with a honorable mention for Gen 3, and then before that Gen 5.
All right. I'm gonna go through my favorite to my least favorite. So favorite, I'm gonna go with Gen 1, Gen 3, Gen 6, Gen 2, Gen 8, Gen 4, Gen 7, Hey You Pikachu, Gen 5.
You Pikachu. Dag.
I love
The bottom for me is definitely Alola. The next one is probably Gen 1. Like I said, I think Gen 1's just boring now. Like I don't want to go back and play it at all. And then right above that is probably Gen 8. Then it's after that is going to be Gen 3, And then Gen 6 is my number 4. Gen 5 is my number 3. Gen 4 is my number 2. And my favorite one is Johto, which is king. Anyway, that should be the end. Thank you for listening. As you saw, we had a little bit of a bloodbath. Strangely enough, not for what was the best Pokemon generation, but for what was the worst. In true Pokemon fan tradition, fighting over what is the worst, not what is the best. I would not have had it any other way. In any case, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to not like and subscribe if you're a Gino fan. Don't forget to listen to us on Spotify. Thank you for tuning in. We have lots more Pokemon content planned for the 35th anniversary year. And we look forward 25th. Yes, there's so many 35s. I keep forgetting.
Yep.
25th anniversary year, and we look forward to playing Gen 4 remakes and Arceus later on. And yeah, we'll see you soon.
Yep.
Goodbye.
Right.